Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion, and by Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems.
This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 327 for April 8th of 2016. Lessons in Luxury from Cadillac to Tesla. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. Mr. V.
How you doing, John?
I'm doing really well.
We got a car in the studio. We got a lot of news breaking. It's a big day today.
And we have Michelle Krebs with us.
That's a big deal.
It is.
Great having you back in here. And we should let everybody know you're with Autotrader, yes, part of
Cox Automotive.
Cox Automotive Empire.
Kelly Blue Book, Mannheim Auto Auctions.
She's got more numbers than I do.
I'm jealous.
Well, what we should also let everybody know is our special guest for today is Paul Spadafora, the chief engineer on the all-new, brand-new Cadillac XT5. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Happy to be here.
So first thing what we got to jump into before we get into all the details of the XT5 is Ed Welburn, Vice President of Design for General Motors, announced his retirement today. It'll actually happen July 1st. But he and his team obviously played a key role in the styling of the XT5. You must have worked hand in glove with GM Design.
Absolutely. It was Ed was intimately involved. He had a great team putting the XT5 together. My team and his team worked seamlessly together. We're really going to miss Ed.
Mm-hmm.
Really are.
Yeah, Mike Simcoe is going to be taking over for Ed, and Ed is a 44-year veteran of General Motors, and Mike is a 33-year veteran of General Motors, an Australian, which is, I think, fascinating to have somebody from the land down under.
In fact, that would be the first non-U.S. born designer of General Motors, or head of GM Design.
Right.
But not surprising, since Mark Royce, who had a big say in that decision, I'm sure, was in Australia, loved Australia, and he's brought a lot of people in.
Yeah, those guys both worked
Australia.
at Holden together,
right?
When he was down there, and when I found out about the news about Ed, and I'll just be brief because I know we got to talk to you about this, but there was an Australian publication called Drive, and the guy wrote this story about last year's North American International Auto Show, and talking about the Australians' influence on what was going on in the auto industry here. And they were very proud of, the work that Mike Simcoe had done. And
well, yeah, that Buick Envision kind of stole the show, or certainly made a massive impact at the show, and that was done by an Aussie designer.
And the Bolt was done by, because we saw the concept Bolt in 2015 at the auto show, and so that was done in Australia. And
that I did not know.
And apparently the Ford GT team was headed up by a Tasmanian.
No kidding.
So there you go. I mean, so it was very nice to see. I mean, here's this, that they're saying, like, in all of these years. And Alan Beatty is Australian. I hadn't known that.
No, I didn't know that.
Or he ran Holden.
Okay.
So maybe he's an Australian, but
I think he's English.
Yes.
Okay. But he did run Holden for a while. So
yeah.
Anyway,
the Aussies are taking over. Mm-hmm. Boy, about a decade ago at General Motors, it was the Canadians were taking over.
But Paul, tell us about this car. I would argue that this is probably the most significant introduction for Cadillac for quite some time, because the segment is so hot, and because you guys, are really beginning to move forward in terms of this whole weight down scenario that you're.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, the Cadillac XT5 replaces the Cadillac Srx. It's an all-new entry. The Srx, of course, is Cadillac's best-selling vehicle, and this vehicle comes off an all-new architecture, and tremendous responsibility and honored to be able to take an all-new architecture and deliver a no-excuses car. And I think it's special that we're able to have the very first vehicle off the all-new architecture be the Cadillac XT5, because we're able to gear that architecture from a mass perspective, from a torsional rigidity perspective, It's a no excuses vehicle that's really going to hit, as you mentioned, the hottest segment, which is the mid SUV luxury segment. It's coming into a very hot market at the right time, and we're very excited about it.
Okay, as you just pointed out, the SRX, best-selling car or vehicle that Cadillac has in its lineup, does what, almost 100,000 units a year in the U.S. market, right? So when you said, okay, we got to do an all-new version, what were the key things that you said, okay, here's where we really have got to improve?
Well, we actually looked at today's vehicle, and we basically had to improve in every area. Going off the old architecture would not have gotten there. It really pushed us into an all-new architecture. All we needed to do is we needed to keep the exterior size, because people love that size, give it, again, aggressive and beautiful styling, while improving fuel economy, reducing mass, increasing safety.
Just go down the checklist, right?
Go down the checklist. We had to improve in every area. And I'm proud to say that with the new architecture and with that in mind, we were able to accomplish that.
So what is this car mass compared to the SRX?
Well, the mass story is a great one. So over today's vehicle, today's SRX, we've gone down almost 300 pounds, 292 to be exact. So that's significant. And John, we were able to drive these cars in California. It really comes through in the ride and handling, fuel economy. It's just a much more pleasant vehicle to drive. And you say, well, you should improve year over year. But, you know, in comparison to the Mercedes-Benz GLE 350, we're 650 pounds lighter than that vehicle, and we're a similar size.
That's a stunning statement, to be 650 pounds lighter than the comparable Mercedes. There's, you know, says great things about you, and maybe it's time for them to redesign theirs too.
But it's all over. The Audi Q5, we're 100 pounds lighter than Audi Q5.
And that's a smaller vehicle.
7 inches smaller, right. So it's really given us a significant advantage over our competitors in that segment. And, you know, we really took a very aggressive approach on how to take mass out. You know, our mantra, we were dedicated that it was every gram of mass, every engineer, every day. We looked at dissimilar high-strength steels. We bonded them with different technologies to make sure that we utilized every gram of mass that we're putting in the vehicle, had a reason for being there, and the analytical tools that we have today were fantastic. We were able to do things we haven't been able to do in years, and by looking at the structural strength of every component we add, we were really able to make it efficient. And so while we took all that mass out, we're planning to be a five-star vehicle, and we're planning on the top safety rating for IIHS. So safety is paramount. Rigidity, drivability, all of that had to be there in addition to the mass reduction.
It's a hugely important vehicle. I echo what Gary said. I look at the sales numbers, and cars just are not doing as well as sport utilities, and the luxury sport utility segment is so hot. But this vehicle also has huge international implications. In fact, if I recall right, you actually unveiled it before LA at the Dubai Auto Show.
That's correct.
Did I get that right? So what were the influences internationally to make this a vehicle that would work everywhere?
Well, that's a great question, Michelle. For Cadillac in general, we have two significant markets. That's obviously North America and China. Cadillac is vastly popular in those two regions, and those are two regions that we absolutely need to win in. So we actually developed this in North America, both the China influence as well. So we were taking China input as I developed the vehicle here in North America. So we worked together. We did clinics not only in North America, but in China. So we took into account not only the North America customer and the Chinese customer, and we found something that maybe is not too surprising. Great styling and wins for the vehicle played very well in both regions. But by getting input from both regions, what it allowed us to do is make the vehicle better. And just little things, you know, if you look at the side of the vehicle, we've introduced, one of the things we had to make better, obviously, is we wanted to make sure that we won for visibilities. SUVs and visibility, that's an absolute critical feature. The little side window that we have on the side of the vehicle, you can see we've taken the outside rear view mirror and we moved it down on the door. That allowed us to put a window in there. And why that happens is, as we are driving the vehicle in the crowded streets of Shanghai or New York, that added visibility is absolutely paramount to the customer. And so that was part of the Chinese influence and listening to their input to make the vehicle better, not only in China, but in North America.
I got to reemphasize that, because when you look at that little triangular window there, you go, man, whatever. How does that improve visibility? I'm telling you, as somebody who's driven the car, when you get in it, you go, oh my God, I can see so much better.
And one thing not to be overlooked, we have an all-new plant in Shanghai, China, Pudong, China, that's going to be building this vehicle. So it's going to be a localized product for them, and we're going to be building it right here in Spring Hill, Tennessee as well.
Hey, speaking of mass reduction, we got a question from one of our viewers already. Armin wants to know, talking about the CT6, he says you've got sort of spider web-like structures behind the front fenders in the architecture. He wants to know if there are similar castings in the XT5. So I've just, put it right up there. You just banged this out of the park now, Paul.
Absolutely. So we took a little different approach on the Cadillac XT5. We used a lot of the same technology that was used to develop the CT6, but our approach was a little bit different. So I talked about the high-strength materials. These high-strength materials were used where we needed structure.
And what you're talking about is steel. You're not talking aluminum.
We
right,
did
so
not.
CT6 has aluminum castings.
Correct.
Right.
We did not go that route. So again, similar concept in creating a high-strength safety cage, but we did not use the materials such as aluminum to get that mass reduction. So what we were able to do is through the analytics, we were able
Talk
to
about
optimize.
that. How do you optimize that? How do you take this vehicle, pull nearly 300 pounds out of it, and not go aluminum intensive? How do these analytics help you figure out how to take mass out?
That's a great question, John. So what we had to look at is you have to look at every joint, every interface, and every part and understand what it does. So where we needed to have safety structure in place, we made sure that we had the highest strength material. When we started to layer out from the safety cage and you have just the hang-on parts that create the beautiful styling, those can be thin and those can be a lower gauge, lower strength material. So it really forced us to look at every part and its role in the vehicle to optimize the mass. So I would say we used similar tools to arrive at a very different approach at getting at mass reduction.
But when you're talking about using these various high-strength steels, I mean, so if we were to go in a car plant 10 years ago, we would see a line of robotic spot welders, just ching, 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 ching. Now, you guys are not doing that with this car because of the difference in materials, right? I mean,
right. These are tailor-welded laser blanks in many cases. These are adhesively bond with spot welds. We've used just about every bonding technology that you can think of. And again, it's using the technology where it's needed and using the joints as appropriate where they're required. So we looked at the vast array of joining techniques, and we probably have them all in this vehicle.
Yeah, GM it seems to me, is more aggressive about using structural adhesives than any other automaker out there.
You're absolutely right, John. In fact, we did a study. It's 80 feet long if you were to take a singular strip of structural adhesive. So it's we've not spared any expense there. And what we found is using structural adhesives along with traditional bonding techniques really does increase the overall torsional stiffness of the vehicle. So we use it amply.
Mm-hmm. You know, you mentioned at the top that you worked closely with the design team. Now, the design team come to you guys with some feature on this car that you guys said, whoa, wait a minute, you know, we can't do that. But then they said, oh, come on, we really, really need it. Can't you guys do it? And that you guys successfully implemented.
Yeah, there's a lot of little examples like that. And I guess, you know, if you're not pushed, you don't stretch and grow. So, you know, if you look at the exterior of the vehicle, the amount of draw, the amount of drama that we were able to put in the body side is pretty significant, and Cadillac always pushes the boundaries on that because they need that dynamic styling. So if you look at the center crease and how bold it is and how it plays into the rear of the vehicle, giving it a very substantial stance, I mean, that's only one example. Look at the size of the headlamps. These are full LED available headlamps. Very aggressive and bold styling. The size of the grille. There's examples throughout on where we challenged ourselves. Easy is not the best execution, right? So, you know, bringing the teams of engineers together with the team of designers to get a vehicle that meets all those requirements we just talked about, fuel economy, mass reduction, while enabling beautiful styling is always a challenge. you know, Ed and his team, they had a very talented team on this program. I think they really did deliver for us.
Can you talk about some of the, we're seeing everybody wants more and more and more technology in their cars. Maybe highlight some of the things that you thought were absolutely important, maybe.
Okay, so we have a Q system, which is much faster, has higher processing speeds. We have Apple CarPlay as well as Android Auto. We have in-vehicle Wi-Fi, which makes me the coolest dad on the block, by the way. We have inductive charging, and we also have a rear view camera, which is 300% more effective than a traditional inside rearview mirror.
Because it can operate as both a reflective mirror, or you flick a little switch on the bottom of it and it literally becomes a video screen.
Yeah, that's correct, John. So if you look at an SUV, you've got 2 rows of seats. You usually have people in the back row. You could have cargo in the back seat. And your visibility, what you're really looking at is a very small back window once you have everybody in your field of view. By being able to utilize the cameras in the rear lift gate, that increases your visibility by 300%. And to your point, if you want to go back to a traditional mirror, it's a simple flick of the switch and you're back to a mirror. So added a lot of technology to the vehicle, and that's part of the new architecture. We were able to plan for that right up front, and all the safety features with side blind zone alert, collision alert, more technology than we can get into. I mean, we also look at adaptive cruise. We have advanced park assist, just multiple features. I know we had the pleasure of driving together in California. We exercised a lot of those features, and it's, you know, it's great when you start out with the technology in mind because it's more efficient in how you introduce it.
Now, knowing John, I'm sure the thing that you guys exercised the most was the powertrain. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we talked about being efficient, and that even plays into our powertrain technology. So 310 horsepower, 272 foot-pounds of torque. That's a very capable engine. You know, when you take 300 pounds of mass out of the vehicle and you couple it to that kind of horsepower, you're getting great performance. But we didn't stop there, right? So we added a V6 engine that was first introduced in the fall. It's an all-new engine. It's already been awarded Ward's Top 10 Best Engine. It was used on the ATS CTS. And this vehicle has start-stop technology as well as AFM, the active fuel management. So what do I mean by that? Again, using this only when you need it power, right? If you're coming up to a stoplight or you're in a parking lot, it will automatically turn the engine off. Then when you request power, it'll seamlessly turn back on. So again, it's giving you efficiencies in the engine. It's giving you all the power you need, but it's also enabling you to have fuel economy. If you're cruising at normal speeds and you have this powerful V6 going down the road, if you're not commanding the additional power, it's going to turn off, it's going to deactivate 2 cylinders. You're going to operate in 4-cylinder mode, and it'll seamlessly come back on when you depress the gas. So what this was able to allow us to do is we actually improved our fuel economy by 3 miles per gallon over the current vehicle without sacrificing any performance or power.
Hey, you talked earlier about this being built in Spring Hill, which is the old Saturn plant. Right. And I know, having been there in the past, they did all the stamping, all the molding on site. I got to believe you're using all that. So fill in the blanks here of, you know, the importance of putting this vehicle in that plant.
Well, Spring Hill is a fantastic plant. Tennessee, Spring Hill, Tennessee is a fantastic assembly center. We had a very unique opportunity there, and we were able to go in, utilize an existing plant, but update it and make it more modern. The workforce is fantastic. We were able to more than double the workforce in Tennessee. But in addition to that, as you mentioned, John, a lot of the technology and space that we had in that assembly plant, we're able to vertically integrate. What does that mean? That means we're able to take things like the fascias, the bumpers, the parts that go on the exterior that are large plastic pieces that traditionally automakers will struggle matching those to a body in white. We're able to put those down the same line, get a perfect color match, and if there's any issues with fit and finish, we simply walk down the line. So this is enabling to give us the Cadillac quality that we need and giving us the efficiencies of having it all under one roof.
That's an important point. I don't think people outside the business realize that the paint on the flexible fascias is not the same paint that goes on the steel, and yet you've got to match them up. And of course, you need different paint because if something's flexible, you need it to be able to flex and not flake off or break or crack. And so, yeah, even on a lot of luxury cars, you can walk up and see that the paint colors are close, but not quite exact. So putting it in the same plan has got to make that a whole lot easier.
That sure does. And so for a Cadillac product going into that type of an assembly center, I think we've got a real synergistic opportunity to raise the bar on quality and take Cadillac to the pinnacle with the Cadillac XT5. So it's a perfect match.
And speaking of quality, you're going up against some Lexus and Mercedes and BMW. What kinds of things are you doing to ensure the absolute best quality?
Well, again, you know, starting out with an all-new architecture, we had the quality goals up there first and foremost. We are taking an experienced workforce and we're augmenting it with new workers that we're bringing in a very methodical measure. So quality is at the pinnacle of what we do. Coming in with an all-new architecture and giving the Cadillac XT5 the first entry off that all-new architecture is allowing us to put quality in the forefront, along with safety.
Now, I want to ask you, you know, as Michelle mentioned earlier, that this is a global vehicle.
It is.
Now, is it the same vehicle around the world, or in different markets will it be a different vehicle?
Adapted.
Okay, so it was an interesting challenge as we worked globally, particularly working directly with China. We wanted to keep the vehicles a win, so we marketed it and we went to both regions. The vehicle is essentially the same, but we made some regional differences. The powertrain for China is completely different. We have a 2-liter turbo in China. There were other areas that were important to that segment that we changed from the North America version. But essentially, we worked really hard at keeping that to be one global vehicle that's outstanding around the world.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we've got, always get phone calls from our viewers. We've got a phone call that's come in. Carmen, why don't we bring that in right now, as a matter of fact?
This is Clem Zarowski in Delmont, Pennsylvania. My question is, when you design a new car, do you consult with insurance companies to find out what their opinion is of how the car should be designed to reduce the cost of fixing a car in event of an accident? I remember when they went from the C4 to the C5 Corvette, the big thing was the $4,000 clamshell hood disappeared on the C5, and that was, somebody said that was because the insurance company recommended stuff like that. Thank you. Bye.
Good question.
That's a good question, Clem. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all this data is available to us now, so we definitely look at the not only the cost of repair, but we also look at some of the IIHS standards. We talked about the shallow offset requirement or small offset requirement, which has been implemented over the last couple of years. We expect to have the highest safety rating in that requirement. So that's a very interesting and aggressive test, which it really has a lot of real-world implications. So if you can imagine going down a two-lane road, if you're able to slightly intersect with another vehicle, that creates tremendous force because they're going in opposite directions, and you're really not engaging the structure in most cases. Again, with an all-new architecture, what we were able to do is actually splay the rails, so we're able to absorb that force efficiently without adding a lot of add-on pieces, but yet we're able to give the customer the utmost in safety protection. And that's from the IIHS. So again, yeah, we're absolutely listening to the insurance agencies.
We've got a couple of other, well, we got a lot of questions here, but two that sort of go together. Matthew wants to know if this architecture would yield a larger model. Mike Ma from San Francisco wants to know if you're going to have a 3-row version in a couple of years.
Well, John, we're not going to get into too much specifics about the architecture, but all I want to say is it's a very capable architecture, and it's absolutely scalable. We look forward to bringing a lot of great products off of it.
Is this a front drive car that is available with all-wheel drive? And what about the all-wheel drive system? What is different about it?
Sure, I'm glad you asked. So it is a primary front-wheel drive vehicle, and it has a dual-clutch all-wheel drive system. So what that means is it's not your typical just spin all four wheels. What it does is it automatically senses where you need the torque and where you need the power. So virtually all four wheels can be powered. We're able to power the front wheels as well as the rear wheels, but also we're able to go left to right. So if you can envision driving down, we like to call this a split mu situation. If you can envision going down the road and half of the road is icy, we're going to transfer that force and that torque to the two wheels that have traction. In fact, if you're going down an icy road and there's a patch that has good gravel, we're going to gravitate to that one wheel. So we literally have the technology and the clutches to be able to transfer the force where you need them. And we've done winter testing versus our competitors, up hills and up split mu conditions, and it is significant because what it does is it transfers the force to where you absolutely have traction. That's what's different about our all-wheel drive system, and I think the customers that need it are really going to be impressed with it.
So you can have 100% rear?
You virtually could. There's losses and other things,
Right,
but virtually the concept is you're absolutely going to be able to transfer 100% front to rear and left to right, depending on where you need it.
Right. Wow.
You know, you talked about the structural rigidity that you've got now, and there's no question that that can help quiet a car, make it perform better and all. But as you get such a stiff structure too, it can have a resonance to it. You know, it's like hitting a cymbal or something like that. Are you running into those kinds of issues, and how are you mitigating that?
That's a great question, John, and that is absolutely something you need to engineer for. We actually put values on those different Hertz measurements so they don't coincide and cause those type of problems. So we look at torsional rigidity. That is critical for an SUV because that gives you the solid planted ride and avoids a lot of the squeak and rattles that propagate from the structure. We're 10% more rigid than we are with the current vehicle. And the current vehicle is pretty darn good in that area. So we've improved that by 10%. Then from a noise level, we have active noise cancellation. We actually have 4 microphones inside the interior cabin to cancel out some of those noises. But you're absolutely right. Through analysis and later through test, we're balancing those rigidities and making sure that they play well together. That's the role of the development team.
Mm-hmm.
So how much of this vehicle was engineered purely in a computer center somewhere, and how much of it was engineered out at Black Lake or some other
Well, the vehicle's totally engineered up front, right? But you can never get away from tuning, validating, and continuing to refine. So the rough vehicle we had tuned on paper, we call it. Really, it's by pixel, if you will. We've really developed that electronically first, and I think this is where the tools are giving us an advantage. We already know where the structural issues are going to be, and we strengthen those up front. Then when we build the early prototypes and then into the production vehicles, we continually test them and validate them and beef them up where they're required. So that's why we were able to start with such a lean structure, and we were able to build it up as we went through the development.
Got another question here from the audience. Bradley wants to know, what's your favorite feature on the XT5?
Oh, that's a tough one. There are a lot of features that I enjoy. I really do enjoy the infotainment, though. The ability to have Apple CarPlay and an inductive phone charger, to me, is great, because what I can do is I can take my phone with me, I can plug it in, I can inductively charge it in the center console, which it fits nicely in the center console, and I can use all of the features that I have on my phone. To me, that's it brings you a bit of comfort wherever you go. You know, the Wi-Fi being coordinated with it makes my family and kids happy. So I really do like the infotainment portion of the vehicle is one of my favorites. But beyond features, I really like the styling of the vehicle. It works well for me. I think the exterior emanates quality. I think the exterior is very boldly styled. But when you get into the interior, we use the highest quality real materials, extensive use of leathers, real wood, aluminum, and it harmoniously comes together. If you look at it, we really simplified the interior just to make it a high luxury, simplified interior. It's not a lot of complicated shapes coming together. It just exudes luxury in me, and it's a pleasure to drive. It's a fun to drive vehicle, and when you put the styling of the interior and exterior together, it's just a joy to drive.
One of the other materials that you use that I love is this microfiber that looks like suede and feels like, or cashmere almost. But that's an option, right?
It is an option. It's on our Platinum model, and it is a very unique feature. We have it not only on the mid panel of the IP, but running up the A-pillars and all the way through the headliner. So it's extensive use of that. And when you couple it up with the real wood and the finest leathers, it just all plays.
So when you were doing the development for this vehicle, what was your benchmark? I mean, what was your like, we got to beat those guys? What vehicle was that?
Well, we looked at the entire segment, because if we look at one single vehicle, and we wanted to look at all the competitors in our segment. And you talked about globalization. We also wanted to look at all the main competitors in the China segment. So we looked at all of them as a whole, and we cherry-picked the best of the best. And we knew where we wanted to win. When we talked to our customer base of current luxury SUV buyers, not only Cadillac, but from our competitors, we asked what would set us apart and what do you value in your vehicle? And that's really what we set out to do. Exterior styling, interior styling were key, but also the drivability of the vehicle was extremely important. And that's why going after mass and taking mass out to make it a more fun to drive vehicle without sacrificing any interior space. In fact, one good dimension that I'll kind of go off here a little bit, we are actually 1 inch shorter than the vehicle it replaces with the Cadillac XT5, but we have nearly 3 additional inches of knee room. So we're able to make the vehicle much more efficient. We take the wheels and we're moving them forward and outboard, both in the front and rear. That additional space, we were told if we had to add space, we're going to add it between the first and second row customers. And that's exactly what we did without adding any interior dimension. In fact, making it just slightly smaller. So with a similar exterior dimension, we're able to give the customer more interior space.
So I have to ask this question. I have to believe that this is a popular vehicle with women. What were women telling you that you interviewed about what do they want in this vehicle?
Well, that's a great question. We spent a lot of time on that because one of the things we implemented on this vehicle is the electric precision shift. It's an electric shift by wire, if you will. That allows us to be more precise and gives us a great aesthetic feature in the vehicle. But more importantly, what a lot of the female buyers told us is, what do I do with my purse? I don't want to put it on the passenger seat. I don't want to put it in the cargo area to keep it secure. Do you have any ideas? The reason I bring up the electric precision shift is we no longer have this large mechanical shifter, and we're able to open up the entire lower portion of the center console. We put some LED lights in there, very muted LED lights, and what it does is you're able to take that purse, put it under the center console so it provides you safety and security because people can't see it, but also gives you flexibility. So that's one example of how we were able to accommodate. Another example is the rear cargo area. You know, it's very reconfigurable. The second row seats fold down flat. They're easy to articulate. And that was done with females in mind. But you know, it's also great for the males because if I have a iPad and I want to plug it in, we have a USB port. I'm able to plug it in and safely put it under the center console where it's out of view from people from the outside of the vehicle.
Very clever.
Real good. With that, Paul, we're going to have to wrap up this segment. Want to thank you for coming on board here, and especially for making sure that we have a Cadillac XT5 in the studio. It's always great to be able to talk to chief engineers and have their baby right on the show with them.
Excellent. It was my pleasure, John. Thank you for having me.
Real good. We're going to take a quick break right now. We're going to come back. We've got our colleague, Anton Wahlman, holding on line. We're going to be talking all about Tesla and were these deposits really deposits, or is there something else going on there? So don't go away. We'll be back in just a minute. But again, Paul, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Well, we're back, and now we're going to be moving from talking about Cadillac to talking about Tesla. And I got to see, is Anton Wahlman on the line?
Yes, I am.
Oh, Anton.
Anton, good afternoon.
Merry Christmas.
All right, Anton, it's Christmas here because it's snowing outside, and I'm sure that where you're sitting in probably at Pete's Coffee in Silicon Valley, there's no snow. Am I correct?
I'm in shorts and a wife beater.
Oh, I'm glad we only have you on audio, Anton.
Yeah.
So the Model 3 deposits, what's going on there?
Well, clearly the number is higher than most people had anticipated, but you have to put this whole thing in context in the sense that the company has done something very different that I don't think has been done quite to the same extent, and that is to forward sell a product that is not really going to be available in volume until a couple of years from now. And the question, one of the two questions we really have to ask ourselves is, why aren't all the other automakers doing something similar? And because if this is a recipe that is objectively and universally a smart idea, then wouldn't the other automakers simply copy this in some form or manner? Or is there something in this methodology of taking refundable deposits this early in the game that is going to backfire? And I guess the next 2 years will be very telling, but I think that is one of the two fundamental questions here that have arisen over the last week.
Michelle, you were shaking your head. No, there's no way other automakers can pull this off, can they?
No. First of all, you have to give, we're all skeptical sometimes of Tesla, but you have to give them credit that they have generated incredible excitement for an automobile that I've never seen in my lifetime. And it's on par with something like an Apple product, an iPhone, an iPad. So, you have to give them credit for that. And that's something nobody else has in the auto industry. And so I don't think anybody could possibly do this kind of thing.
Michelle, funny that you should mention this Apple phenomenon, because I have in my hand here a product
which had no phenomenon.
Anton, you can't see this, but I am holding up a Zune, a Microsoft Zune. So here we have a music player that came out from the world's largest software company, and I would argue it's every bit as good as an iPod. It's got full capability, and Microsoft couldn't make it happen. And I think it goes to your point.
It's this intrigue.
Right.
This,
and this is why other car companies can't do it.
And Apple and Tesla I see as kind of the same in the same space in terms of that magical brand.
But Anton, I want to talk to you about whether or not, okay, I think, Michelle, you said they're up to 277,000 orders or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I like your conspiracy theory, Anton, that maybe this could just be a play, or certainly the system is ripe for being gamed by shareholders.
It is possible. I mean, I posed that theory back on February 22nd in an article saying that this could be something that might happen, but there is no way for us to provide any, so of course, evidence of that whatsoever. It's just impossible to prove that from the outside. So
explain the conspiracy theory. What's the thinking behind why it might be a conspiracy?
Well, just consider the scenario, right? If you wanted to show a lot of deposits, you could, and they're fully refundable. You could imagine ways by which you could place many of them, especially if you have some sort of financial interest in the company. So that is something that, I mean, if you just, I don't know what it takes in terms of multiple email addresses or multiple phone numbers or multiple addresses or multiple credit card numbers or whatever it takes. So there's, of course, no way from the outside to see whether something like that has occurred or not. So we can't just assume that it has occurred. But I posed that theory some time ago that that is something that should at least be kept in mind, that one might consider the possibility.
And since you posed your theory, I want to say the stock price has gone up about $80 a share.
I'd say more than that, but yeah, no, absolutely. No, I mean, again, I think that there's a combination of factors here. I mean, clearly the overall media attention to the matter has taken on a life of its own. I think it really goes to what you said earlier, Gary, about comparing the Zune with the iPod and so forth. And if you ask the regular person on the street to name a CEO of an automaker, I don't think more than a very small, very low single-digit percentage of people outside of the state of Michigan could name a single CEO of a single automaker, except one, and we all know who that is. And coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidental, there's only one auto CEO that I'm aware of who tweets, right? And who has more followers around the world. I mean, you have two human beings in the world today that dominate social media. Their names are Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And they both use the same method. And that is Twitter. And they both get a lot of advertising completely for free. Maybe perhaps one of the other automakers should either hire Donald Trump as a CEO or as a chief marketing officer or something, but that certainly would buy them billions of dollars in free advertising.
Right.
Interesting concept.
Well, I mean, but part of the thing, I mean, I think virtually every automaker executive has a Twitter account, but it's very closely vetted. And I have a feeling that when it comes to either Donald Trump or Elon Musk, that
They run their
There's
own
no
show.
filter.
that
Right.
there's no filter. I mean, and that can be good news or it can be bad news depending on things. So Anton, so you're on the ground out there in Silicon Valley. So I mean, what is the whole feeling like in terms of, you know, the 270 odd thousand people who have ponied up money? Is there a lot of discussion about this when you're sitting there having coffee?
To be sure, I mean, it is a local company after all, but I don't think the big picture has any additional ingredient otherwise than it does for most of the rest of the world, because one of the critical ingredients in this thing is missing in all of these discussions, regardless of geography, and that is the issue of profitability and comparative economics. We have a case here in which one company has shown what appears to be a very beautiful car, has a lot of content, essentially the same amount of content that their current $70,000 car, but the price is half. So the question one must ask oneself is, if the company is currently losing almost $20,000 per car sold today at $70,000, at what profit or loss could this car possibly be produced at $35,000? And if it can be produced at break even or better at $35,000, why can't another automaker produce a similar car at that type of a price or better? Now, other automakers typically do not show their cards so far in advance, so maybe this is what we will in fact see in the next 2 or so years. But again, that poses the question of why aren't they taking a leap like this into the future if this turns out to be such a good idea?
Well, I think you answered your question to a degree. Nobody else can afford to sell cars at a $20,000 loss. And now that's an all-in, you know, full capital investment kind of accounting, but that's a fair way to account to anyway. You know, I'm not too worried about Tesla's losses right now at the moment, only because their top line is growing so fast. Their sales are growing so fast. You know, they're still a startup for all practical purposes. And, you know, what have they made in their total existence? Not even 100,000 cars. So it doesn't surprise me that they're losing money right now. If they can maintain the same kind of growth, at some point they should be profitable, or somebody else is going to go in and clean their clock.
See, but I wonder whether...
I mean, that would work, of course, is the true gross margin. The truly fully costed gross margin is actually profitable to any significant extent. But, you know, if that is not the case, then the more they sell, they're not going to reach that break-even level. So that is what we're going to have to see here. But, I mean, you take the comparative scenario. GM will be a year ahead of these guys to market with the Chevy Bolt, with a car that will have similar range, similar basic capabilities, except most people would tend to look at the two pictures of these cars and say, well, the Tesla is kind of a beautiful car. The Bolt, it might be a reasonably looking econo-box, but it's nevertheless an econo-box. And the question is there any inherent cost difference in producing a really beautiful car versus one that is sort of somewhere in the middle?
Costs the same amount of money to bend sheet metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gary's just saying, to your point, A beautiful car really doesn't cost any much more money to make
No.
than a plain Jane car.
No.
So, Michelle, what do you think what do you think the chances of the Model 3 are to ultimately turn a profit for the company?
Oh, turn a profit for the company? That's a hard one to guess. But I think it'll be successful sales-wise. I think even if the conspiracy theory is true and there's some of that going on, still, there's a lot of interest and a lot of people that are serious about buying that car. But we've seen that with their more expensive cars, and they just have a magical touch in that regard.
So could there be another car company in the world, to go to Anton's earlier point, that could do the same thing that these guys did? Show a car that they, by their own admission, are not going to have out until 2017, end of 2017, and have people put money down for it?
Maybe Porsche, maybe Ferrari. You'd have to go into the exotics. A mass market company? I don't think so.
I don't.
Even if they, look, if a Ford or a Chevrolet showed the Model 3, I don't think there'd be the same buzz. To Michelle's point, there's an aura, there's a mystique
And
about
there's a
Tesla.
story. I mean, Elon Musk has a great story, and you look at he literally is like taking a moonshot with all the things that he's done. Look at, and people were skeptical about other things that he's done. So I think they give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay, well, he was successful in this, and he was successful in this, and now he's not making money on Tesla yet, but he was so successful with these other things. You sort of like, okay, I'll suspend my suspicion, and you take this leap of faith that he'll make this all happen. But it's the brand, it's the story around it, it's this taking this huge risk of doing something totally different.
So do you think if there was a phenomenal Buick, let's say, that people would put down $1,000 2 years in advance?
I don't see it.
No, I don't think so.
And so Anton, is this the reality distortion field that's happening out there?
Well, I mean, I think that the parallel is at least somewhat instructive. I mean, obviously the situation is not analogous, but you might recall 6 years ago, almost to the day today, in April of 2010, Nissan opened up reservations for the Leaf. They took deposits. I think they ended up getting about 25,000 of them at the time. I was one of them. I know this very well. And, a few months later, Carlos Ghosn said, we can't just have one factory in Japan spitting out 50 or 100,000 of these a year. We need two more factories, one in Tennessee and one in the UK, because by 2013, the smallest number he could think of was 500,000 Leafs per year. Now, of course, they never got there. They make, about 70,000 Leafs a year on a global basis right now. But in the meantime, for that 1 year that lapsed between deposits until the car actually started reaching in meaningful volume U.S. shores a year later, April or May of 2011, a lot of those people fell off and ended up not taking delivery of said cars. So now we have essentially, that was a 1 year fuse. Now we're looking at a 2 year fuse, and if you're ordering the car today, probably a 3 or even longer year fuse. A lot of products can emerge between now and then. Now that they're out there, they're essentially a sitting target, right? So all the other automakers now know exactly what bogey they got to hit over the next 24 months.
And what about a technological breakthrough? If we saw something dramatic happen with batteries, that changes the game too, I think.
It could. I don't know that we're going to see a breakthrough in that.
I don't think we are, but what if?
But John, as you pointed out, the Tesla Model S has basically eaten the lunch of all the other luxury sedan.
No, that's the impressive thing. If you look at Tesla's sales numbers, they're not that great. But if you only compare them to cars that cost more than $100,000, Tesla sells as many $100,000 plus cars as everybody else put together.
Right.
Everybody else put together.
And they all know what that car is. They have all seen that car. They have all driven that car. I mean, so they still haven't beaten him at that game.
Well, and this is what scares the hell out of the rest of the auto industry, is they've seen what Tesla's been able to do in the upper $100,000 level. Now they're coming down with a $35,000 car. Yowza. What if they repeat the same thing in that segment? That's what everybody is scared about. Anton, what do you think about the Model 3 as it's been shown? When I look at it, it looks pretty good. to me, the front end does not look real. It looks like it's unfinished. And there's already been talk that maybe it's not even going to have a steering wheel. Elon Musk made some Twitter comment about that.
Yeah, no, and I think the front end actually looks a lot like the Model X, the one that just started production a few short months ago. So I think there's a clear family resemblance there. I think that between this initial concept and the final version, surely there will be some adjustments, but I largely think this is it. I really don't think it looks all that bad. In fact, I quite like the design myself. So I don't think that is going to be the big deal. I think what you're going to see is additional body styles. I think you're going to see a crossover happening, that there's some concept that they'll probably show within a year from now that will follow the sedan by 18 months or so in actual production. So I think there's going to be a family of vehicles, and the company now is obviously going to have to raise a lot more fresh equity capital in order to finance the expansion of the company to achieve all of these goals. And what you're probably going to hear next is, we got so many orders, we got to build factories, one in the Midwest, one in Europe, one in China, and that'll cost a few $1 billion. So please, here's your opportunity to invest. I mean, I think that is about as certain as amen in church here in the next month or so. So I think that is kind of the plan here for the short term. And I think that may even have been the chief motivation of showing this product so early in the game and taking the risk that the company Osborne's its existing product, as well as opening up for competitive analysis a lot earlier than traditionally has been assumed to be prudent in the industry.
Anything else?
So Anton, so you think they will be opening factories elsewhere in the world besides in Fremont?
I think that they will certainly raise money for that purpose. Whether in the end that money will be invested accordingly remains to be seen. And remember, it was just over 2 years ago, the company raised just over $2 billion to build the factory in Nevada that will be producing battery packs. So far, the company has invested under $500 million, I believe, of that $2 billion into that factory. The rest of the money went elsewhere. So, clearly the company has had far, far higher operational losses in the meantime, and they've got to be covered somehow, and the company can't really take out more debt. Therefore, you have to raise equity capital.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, Anton, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. Very good update on everything going on at Tesla.
Good. Well, we'll reconvene.
And Anton, go get dressed. This wife beater in shorts, I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, next time I'll pull on a sweater.
All right. Okay. Glad to hear it.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, interesting. To your point, Michelle, I think you'd have to go back to the 1960s to find this kind of national buzz about a new car.
The Mustang is the only thing that comes to mind that
original
might be
Mustang.
That's a possibility, and I was too young to.
Yeah, same here. I don't remember that quite.
And remember, we didn't have the internet where you had all this access to information and that kind of thing going on, so that certainly has helped the company. Twitter.
Yeah.
So other news that just developed in the last day, Chrysler killing off essentially the Chrysler 200.
We knew this was coming. Marchione said this in late January. They were going to stop building the 200, and the Dodge Dart will be next. They just can't compete in that segment.
I think, because I was following the sales, and if you go back to early last year, they were selling these things like crazy.
How were they selling them,
With incentives.
Huge incentives, dirt cheap leases, and a lot of rental cars.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I think they made the decision last summer, hey, this thing, we're just not going to support it anymore because sales dropped off a cliff.
Oh, they dropped off incredibly. And there's a macro picture here too, because cars sales are down compared to
passenger cars.
Passenger cars in every segment down compared to crossovers. I was looking at the March numbers. So the mid-size car segment that the Chrysler 200 competes in, down 2%. Compact sport utilities up 17%.
Wow.
The mid-size segment and small car segment are just suffering. So the Chrysler 200 within that segment is trying to compete with Toyota Camry, Honda Accord. The new Malibu is doing really well. We're seeing shopping.
Beautiful car.
Well, and the shopping is just skyrocketing on our website. And, you know, Ford Fusion, those are and Nissan Altima, heavyweights. And so they just, they can't compete in that.
200's a good-looking car.
It is.
I mean, and it's
They also have quality issues. That's always
been an FCA issue or a Chrysler issue.
But I mean, but isn't that sort of like a following indicator rather than a leading indicator? I mean, that people buy these, you know, they buy a lot of them, and they're like, damn, not so good. But I mean, just from looking at that car and from the amenities and
one of the best looking sedans on the road.
You know,
but remember, people research quality all, you know.
They do, but here's what I think happened. I think, you know, Chrysler is going to move all this production all over the place, right? They need more Jeeps, they need more Rams. So they looked at the Sterling Heights plant and they said, we got to put the Ram 1500 in that plant. And that's where I think this whole collapse in sales came from. Back last summer, they went, boy, the faster we get that 200 out of Sterling Heights, the faster we can get Rams in it.
Maybe, but I thought they were doing it. I mean, even this last month, the incentive on that is somewhere in the range of $4,000.
But still down substantially where it was a year ago.
Sales-wise.
No.
Oh,
incentives-wise, it's like $2,000 off what they had before.
Not quite, but you know, it's way up there. So, you know, they have been supporting it. It's just, but I do think, you know, they made the plan.
And ironically, production of the 200 and the Dodge Dart were supposed to go to Mexico. And now apparently those plans are off. Meanwhile, Ford Motor Company announces it's going to build a new plant in Mexico, and instantly Donald Trump and the UAW come out of the woodwork to crucify Ford about it. What do you make of what's going on there, Gary?
Well, okay. I mean, let's face it. Every domestic automaker has plants in Mexico and are making cars.
And non-domestic.
And non-domestic. But I'm just saying that from the point of view of, you know, of like, let's just from, okay, so Ford has to make a business decision of, okay, what's most cost effective for us to build? Where should we build things? And so we're going to move things around. And it's just very common.
And we saw this coming too. They made no secret about any of this as well.
Because, you know, the Focus and this Ford C-Max that they make here in Michigan, which are going to Mexico, they can't give those things away
for
practically.
sales and profit margins like this. So they've got to figure out a way to.
So I mean, so yeah, if I'm in the UAW, I'm pissed. I get that.
But
I
they knew it.
But they
came out in the contract docs.
But you're not going to be happy. I mean, you're not going to say.
I know,
but if you get a product that's higher profit, some of it I think is just, you know, posturing for show.
Right, but I mean, they have to. I mean, so
wouldn't you rather have a hotter product with a lot more content and
yes,
you know,
safer job security?
Exactly.
But I want them both. You know what I mean? It's just like I want it all. I don't want any jobs to go down there.
Well, I agree, but that's not realistic.
And then in the political thing of, you know, Trump, you know, railing about this. I mean, I think the guy's not the economic genius that some think he is.
It's something to rail at.
That maybe some think he is. But yeah, and that's been my point all along. Why is he singling out Ford? Because to your point, Michelle, or your point, Gary, in fact, General Motors is in the process of doubling its production in Mexico. Nothing from Trump about that whatsoever. So
I don't know. Did somebody else make a contribution, or I don't know?
I don't know. There's some reason that somebody said, "Hey, Donald, you got to go after Ford. Forget everybody else. Just go after Ford." I don't get it.
Don't know either.
I don't know. It's inexplicable, but yeah. So a little dust and.
There's been lots of things you can't explain.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, yeah,
process.
just total political play, and that's the way I read that.
Hey, another thing that we had on Autoline Daily today is looks like the Volkswagen scandal is starting to catch up to BMW and Mercedes because their diesel sales have fallen off a cliff.
Well, you know, I think Volkswagen did diesel in for cars, at least here. And the other thing is, again, looking at the bigger picture, do you really need to spend more for a diesel when gas prices are so low? And
this is something that I looked at because I was sort of wondering about it. I mean, so we're seeing, you know, the down thing, and so first, you know, so I went to and checked the prices of fuel, and it's, you know, I mean, diesel and gasoline are not that much different in terms of costs. then we're talking about luxury cars, and people won't care that much anyway because of that. But this is really astonishing. So I went to the Mercedes media site and was looking at it has model 20 or 15 pricing, so this is a little off. But so you buy a E250 Blue Tech Sport/Luxury, and it costs $51,800, and the only gasoline is then the E350 Sport Luxury, $52,300.
So the gasoline's more expensive than the diesel.
And
Interesting.
E250 Blue Tech 4MATIC Sport Luxury is $54,300. The the E350 4MATIC Sport Luxury is $54,800, and it's
all the way up and down the line.
It's a hell of a deal.
So they're subsidizing diesel sales.
It's a hell of a deal. Buy it.
And yet, I can tell you, for the first 3 months of this year, Q1, Mercedes diesel sales down 60%.
Right.
Well, people are
60.
skeptical now. It's.
But this is just recent because through the end of last year, diesel sales were holding up at BMW and Mercedes. In fact, they were up. And I guess the message got through finally because people are turning away from diesels, at least in the luxury end.
Yes.
If you look at pickups, crossovers,
and I think that will
SUVs,
always
they're
be
down, but not that much.
All right, but the thing is, so then I looked at Mercedes and BMW car sales. Okay, so we'll not have, take the light duty trucks out of there. BMW car sales are down 26% for the first quarter. Mercedes car sales are down 17.2% for the first quarter of the year. So, they're losing something there too.
You're talking passenger cars.
Just the passenger
right,
cars.
right.
I took the trucks out because it just, would be too weighted towards other things. But then then I was looking at other vehicles. I mean, and we're not going to see the number this week, so we don't have time for it. But J.D. Power last week, they were warning at the amount of incentives that are being put on cars and trucks right now. More cars than trucks, obviously, for obvious reason. But they're saying they're getting to the point of recession sort of spending in terms of that. And I'm sure you guys
They were up
Autotrader have it.
14% over a year ago, and especially in luxury cars.
Right.
Traditional luxury cars are not doing so well. Again, sport utilities are. The only car segment doing decently in the luxury segment are entry-level luxury cars.
And Michelle, didn't you come out with something just today or very recently on sports cars?
Well, yes. Bloomberg had a piece today, so we started digging into some numbers. Sports car sales are falling way off. We're seeing traffic in new sports cars, used, certified pre-owned, all dropping off. And what concerns me is often sports cars are a bellwether for where sales are going. Think about it. It's a discretionary thing. We saw sports cars go down. They were the first to go down in the recession. They were last to come out. They've had a resurgence, but tapering off. And you look at the demographics too. Those are bought by older men, and that population's maybe not interested in sport cars anymore. And certainly the younger generation isn't. They aren't in the position, maybe not have the interest.
That's interesting. I've never heard that before. Sports cars as a bellwether for the economy. I've always looked at Class 8 trucks.
Well, and there's that, and there are other
opposite of
bellwethers.
a little
But if you tracked it through the last recession, they were the first to drop
Very
and
interesting.
took a long time to come back out. So, and think about it. I think our demographics show 70% purchased by men, and high income. So that isn't the millennials.
Right.
Although, since you guys do include muscle cars in there, which of course I don't consider to be a sports car. I think it's a muscle car, but that's just me.
Which car? is
Muscle
not a-
cars.
Muscle cars.
Oh, muscle
Mustang.
cars. Yeah.
I think
they're
you better be looking at those, though.
I don't think it's a sports car. No, but Camaro's up 7.3%. Mustang's up 1.1%.
Corvette's down.
Corvette was at kind of an unrealistic level there for a while, though. It's probably more at its natural level right
Could
now.
be.
But it's
Certainly not
really
anywhere
getting
high
hammered.
besides where it used to be.
Like hybrids are just getting, and
Yes.
EVs are just getting, the i3 is down 71.6%.
With that, the i8.
i8, 48.7%.
Yeah.
Prius down 20.8%.
Right.
C-Max down 5.7%. And they're
Chevrolet Volt. Look that one up, though.
plus 112.8%.
That's pretty impressive.
The new Prius, though, I will say, is getting a lot of interest.
Okay, so So, okay, to the point of Prius is, okay, so Prius down 21%. Okay, let's just call it 20%.
I know where you're going with this.
And Volt up 113%. We'll call it
tiny.
113%. Prius sales, first quarter, 32,000. Volt sales, we'll give them 4,000.
Yeah.
I mean,
So Prius is almost 10 times.
But we are seeing a lot of shopping interest in the new Prius.
because it's, well,
New.
in the number. I mean, the number's still big. I mean, it's just like I was in, and we've talked about the hybrid version of the MKZ versus the non-hybrid version, and the hybrid version is actually up 1.1%.
Of course, they charge the same for it too, right?
That's right.
Yeah. But what's the take rate? Can you calculate that? Because the last I looked, it was about 27%.
It was like 1,600 MKZ hybrids sold, and I'm not going to be able to figure it out because.
Well, whatever. It's about 1 out of 4 is a hybrid for no extra cost. See,
Yeah,
that to
that's-
me was a very telling statistic.
Yeah, it's
because
about
people have told me, well, the reasons hybrids don't sell as well is because you have to pay a premium, and it was like, not with the MKZ, you don't. Now in California, the take rate's more like 50%.
Because there's an added benefit.
But
Yeah.
still, in the center of the universe for those kinds of cars, half the buyers say, I don't want a hybrid, even if there's no extra cost.
Although I would be interested to know if we rolled over to Heinz Park Lincoln right now and said, we want to buy a hybrid MKZ, and they'd say, I can give you this one over here right now. You know what I mean? The availability. I'm sure that they send them all to California. I mean,
And East Coast. I've known people on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Some people have even speculated that Ford is limiting the availability of its hybrids because it loses money on them, so it only builds enough to do what it has to do.
Right.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I still find it very telling that for no extra cost, 3 out of 4 buyers say,
Yes.
I don't want a car that gets 50% better fuel economy.
Although now, see, when we were just talking earlier about all those people who put the $1,000 down to buy that Tesla that they're not even going to have for a long time, I think the interest of alternative powered vehicles may be.
It may,
be at a
but I don't.
tipping point.
But I think it's not just about it. It's a Tesla. It's not just an EV.
Yeah. Hey, look, we're at the top of the hour here. We ought to bring all this to a close. It was cool having Paul Spadafora here. Love having the XT5 in the studio. Michelle, great having you on board again.
Thanks for being. Let me be here.
So, Gary, let's do it again next week.
And I think we're going to have an alternative vehicle next week.
We're going to have one that doesn't use gasoline, doesn't use diesel, doesn't use electricity directly. So we'll let you all
Fuel
figure
cell
out what
car,
that might
isn't
be.
it?
They put a picture of it. Yeah, it's
Toyota Mirai.
Right. Real good. So thanks, everybody, for having tuned in. Join us again next week.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion, and by Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.